What's going on, ladies and D-Gens? This is Steve, Big Bucks Beta, coming to you Monday, March 3rd, 2024. Normally, I don't do these types of video reactions. I've done a couple in the past, but as you guys should know if you're a follower of this channel, it takes a lot for me to come out here, take time out of my day, go over a reaction, and go in as much as I'm about to do. All I can say is we took a bye week from this card because we just kind of knew and thought this was going to be a shit card, but this main event fight at UFC Vegas 87, Rozenstruik versus Gaziev, was so egregiously bad, in my opinion. Egregiously bad. Like, this may be the worst main event fight I think I've seen in a long time. Maybe one of the worst main events in the UFC. I think you can make a legitimate argument here. But I'll start with this. Before I go in on this shit stain of a main event, I want to state clearly that, yes, I am aware that either one of these guys I'm about to go in on would most likely beat my ass and kill me given the opportunity in public. These are UFC heavyweights. I will respect and treat them as such, but honestly, if you watched this fight and took time out of your day on a Saturday to relax, maybe have a Modelo, watch some UFC, and you were treated to this shit stain of a main event, you're probably looking around and you're like, fuck, I could run around with my buddy and do what these guys do. And fuck me if this didn't look like me and Money Mansman, my co-host, dancing around the octagon for 20 minutes, beer bellies out and all. And the sad thing, too, and the crazy thing is that this card, many MMA gurus, and including me and Money Mansman, we kind of deemed this to be a shit card, but this actually turned out to be one of the more exciting cards on the year. We had a potential knockout of the year from Vinicius Oliveira with the flying knee. You guys should check that out if you haven't already. But there was also some amazing finishes from Steve Erceg, Christian Leroy Duncan, Ludovic Klein, and hell, even Loik Radzhabov got a finish to close it out in the third round to open up the prelim card. Oddly enough, though, the co-main event, the main card fights were kind of a snoozer. There were some disappointments there, but again, like, kind of hard to be mad about that when the whole trend and the whole vibe of the card was just basically disappointment, want not much to do with it. But let's get to the point of the video here. Main event fight, it's Jairzinho, Biggie Boy Rozenstruik, and Shamil Gaziev. Not exactly who we wanted as a main event, but this is what we ended up getting. That's going to be the theme here overall. This was a fight in the UFC Apex in Vegas that had an over-under of 1.5 rounds in a 5-round main event. Clearly, the sports books have not seen a Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight because anyone that has knows it's going to go one of two ways. He'll get knocked out in 30 seconds, or it's going to be an ugly decision. And there really just is no in between with Rozenstruik. If you know, you remember, some of his last headliners in the Apex, a lot of them haven't gone his way to begin with. But, regardless here, like, this is your main event. Let's be hopeful. It's over under 1.5 rounds, but, I mean, let's not go too deep into this. But it's disappointment number one. First 2 rounds of the fight, spoiler alert, the over hits here. I don't go too depth into this because there's really not much for me to say. And this could just be best summarized as Gaziev for 2 rounds is swinging hard. He's chasing Rozenstruik around the octagon. He's trying to knock him out. Biggie Boy definitely loses the first round in my opinion, despite leading in the strikes. Second round, more of a coin toss situation. You can make the argument Jairzinho wins it. You can make the argument Gaziev takes it at the end. But you know what? I mean, I think Gaziev was in control. He landed some pretty good strikes himself. Kind of got, like, a Biggie Boy fight, as me and Mansman like to dub it. Pretty much what we sort of disappointingly expected at this point. But now, let's enter round 3. And Gaziev, my guy, he just puts up what I like to refer to as the best Chris Moutinho impression that he could do. What do I mean by this? Well, he starts off the round leaning forward, breathing out of his mouth heavily, arms down, face presented, no care in the world. He's screaming at the world, please hit me, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, hit me as hard as you can. I'm not going to do anything. Please hit me. And at first I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is a strategy. It's been 10 minutes of heavy fighting. Might be starting to lose the edge, but maybe it's a strategy. Maybe he's trying to get Rozenstruik to gas out. No, that wasn't the case. He just, ran around, arms down, face presented, taking knuckle sandwiches at this point. And you know what? At this point, we're in the third. I'm not going to be disrespectful to Chris Moutinho, because at least Chris Moutinho, in his fight against Sean O'Malley, at least he kept his hands up the whole time. Tried to at least give us the impression that he wanted to block the incoming strikes that were being thrown at him. Gaziev, on the other hand, just reverts to the dumbest fucking fighting stance I think I've seen in a UFC main event. Just no other way to explain it here, folks. This guy looked like myself coming out of the gym after running literally a half mile on the treadmill with a little bit of blood on his face. Just no defense whatsoever. No fucking fight plan to be seen. It just looked like at this point it was survival mode, and that was it. Somehow, Gaziev does put up a last-second effort in that final minute. He doesn't die from an inherent stroke. Manages to get to his corner. And, I see this round 3, and I'm just like, what the fuck is Gaziev doing? Like, is he already this tired? Because it's been 15 minutes, and this guy literally just did nothing for 5 minutes. What the hell's going to happen next round? Well, I'll tell you, folks. Here's what happens. Round 4. Once again, Gaziev, arms down, face presented, screaming to Jairzinho, please punch me. Please punch me in my dumb fucking face as hard as I can. We're beginning to reach Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000 level of fucking stupid here, folks. Because Jairzinho probably could, if he just put in a little more effort, probably could just start, swinging as hard as he could. Probably could clip him at this point. I mean, by this point, we're looking at the third round, and Jairzinho already struck him 47 times in the face. Maybe not in the face, but 47 times he struck him, 47 of them significant strikes, compared to the 5. That's right, people. 5 significant strikes in round 3 for Shamil Gaziev. So round 4, we're off to a hot start. But you know what? All credit to Jairzinho here, because not only does he still look great on the feet right now, not only does he clearly still have the cardio, he's sticking to his game plan. He's actually not chasing Gaziev. He's actually sticking to the game plan. He's just jabbing him with the left the whole time, clipping him each time, throwing a 2-piece combo, hitting him pretty much every single time. Gaziev, now he's still out here, and that's right, he's pulling his best William Nightmare Knight impression. He's just walking around, taking punches, taking strikes, not really effectively responding whatsoever. Now if you're a Gaziev bettor, you're probably starting to get scared. You're probably worried that this is going to be a tie going into round 5. You're probably worried Gaziev's going to get knocked out here. Does Gaziev get knocked out, though? No. The guy wants to be tough. Okay, sure. Getting punched in the face, as a guy who has been punched in the face before, not a good time, not easily done. But, for a guy who's putting in no effort in the octagon, seems to be putting a lot of effort into getting punched in the face. And maybe that's all the strength he had left, was just, let me get punched in the face and survive, because that's all I can do at this point. That's what Gaziev looked like here, folks. And I don't know, you watch later in the fight, he's barely fucking breathing. He's about to spit out his mouthpiece where he's trying to breathe. And it gets to a point where I'm like, wow, maybe I need to hit the treadmill. Maybe I should start doing some cardio. Because I don't want to look like this fat fuck right now in the octagon, just eating knuckle sandwiches for lunch, trying to stay alive, basically begging to be punched in the face. So, maybe I'll start to hit the gym more often. But no, we gotta sit here. We're gonna watch another 3 minutes of this fight. Towards the end, though, last minute, Gaziev, he eats a 3-piece combo from Jairzinho, finally loses that fucking mouthpiece that he's been fucking hanging on for dear life. Not like his own life, but, hanging on to that mouthpiece with his teeth. Loses it. Great job by Mark Goddard. Picks it up, makes him put it back in, continues the fight. At this point, I'm like, wow. This guy, Shamil Gaziev, was a fucking minus 160 favorite. Dana White signed this guy off of Contender Series. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is a great showing for Gaziev here, folks. Wow. Just got another real UFC contender here, folks. Just, this is exactly the point of signing these guys. Let's just throw them in a big fucking main event for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Gilmore, you suck, you jackass.
Gotta love it, though. You know, like, gotta... And you know what? Don't get me wrong. Like, sometimes these Dana White's Contender Series guys, they need some humble pie. They need to see if they can step up to the plate, and I'm all for it, but let's just see what happens in round 5. And now comes the big controversy. We see Gaziev talking to his corner, and now, instead of the fight starting, in comes Mark Goddard, the fucking GOAT MMA ref, in my opinion, if I haven't said it already. He's coming in, a no bullshit attitude, calls the doctor, and you're just listening in, and he's like, what did he say? I want to know what he said to his corner. And we're listening in, the doctor's checking out Gaziev, and all of a sudden you just hear he can't see from his eye. Another 10 seconds, and Goddard calls the fight. And I'm just shaking my head like, what? Like, that's it? Like, did something happen? And look, you can get mad all you want. We'll get into the controversy of Gaziev in a second. Mark Goddard, I think he deserves the credit here. Great stoppage by Goddard. I think he did everything by the book. He did it correctly. The fighter was bitching about his eye, essentially. He clearly, though, when you look at him, had no intention of getting back into the octagon. He had no motivation to fight whatsoever. His back was turned to the cage the whole fucking time. And this was just a guy who I think was ready to give up, ready to be done, but didn't want to actually throw in the towel. Which I thought was strange, because normally, with a guy, like I said, with Justin Tafa, a guy who literally couldn't stand on his own fucking feet, at least he went out there, died on his shield, and tried to put weight on the leg, couldn't, got kicked, went down. This guy didn't even manage to get back out and throw another punch, or at least let Jairzinho get another 3-piece on him. He just basically keeps his back to him and just, like, doesn't leave. And you look at the last 2 rounds and you look at the numbers, the guy ate 99 significant strikes in the last 2 rounds. So safe to say, maybe now he's had enough, but also at the same time, you took 2 rounds, you ate 99 significant strikes, you didn't put up an effort, why are you giving up now? Like, Gaziev, you had 5 minutes left to go. 5 minutes to at least get to a decision and at least save some sort of face, look somewhat respectable. And you know what? I'll even say this. Let's not discredit William Nightmare Knight now for a second. At least Nightmare Knight went to decision, as terrible as that was. You could at least have the chance to boo him. But no, he, like, literally, Gaziev just straight up quits on this fight and says he had enough. Now, whether he could see, whether he couldn't see, I don't know. If the guy couldn't see, you know, why does he make such a big fuss? It wasn't like it was an eye poke. It was a clean, like, 3-piece combo. He ate, like, I mean, he ate it like he ate all the other punches, but for some reason, that was the one that just made him essentially quit. Which even then, he didn't even actually say he quit. Mark Goddard just called the fight, but it really didn't look like he put up much of a fight of it either. Which, again, I think is weird, because you're a UFC fighter. This is a league where they kind of pride themselves on not quitting. They pride themselves on, I'm going to go out cold, or I'm going to go out and tap. I'm not going to let the ref make the decision. I'm not going to let the judges go for it if I don't have to.
Martin! Come back with your shield. Or on it.
But just oddly enough, no fight whatsoever from Gaziev here. He just basically quits. And that's just how I see it. He quits on his fucking corner. He quits on the fight. And I don't know, like, I go back and forth here, and it's just like, who do you blame for this whole situation? Do you blame Gaziev for giving up? Do you blame Rosenstrike for not fucking going as hard as he probably could have in this 5-round fight? Do you blame Dana White for just putting either of these guys in a situation? Because I wish I could say I was surprised by how much of a disappointment that this turned out to be. It was 3 years, I think, since Biggie Boy's last main event fight at the Apex. I could be wrong there. And 3 years ago, Biggie Boy had a kind of forgotten snooze fest between him and Cyril Gahn, which may or may not be looking better the longer it ages, but I'm just shocked we got more of a similar performance out of Biggie Boy here. Whereas, I'm more shocked about that than I am shocked about how Gaziev didn't step up, because, let's be honest, Gaziev, was a minus 160 favorite, and he had a knockout against Martin Buday in a Dana White's Contender Series submission prior to that. Okay, you know what? On second thought, fuck this. Dana White, what the fuck were you thinking putting this guy in an Apex main event? Seriously, though, why was this guy even a favorite to go into this fight? And don't get me wrong, like I said, I think it was more disappointing Jairzinho didn't get the finish, and he put up another boring-ass performance, but at the same time, Jairzinho's like a heavyweight gatekeeper at this point in his career. You can even say that he could still theoretically work his way up to a title run if he does improve. I don't know if I see that happening, but Rosenstruck just had the clear experience. He has an advantage all around, in my opinion. How do you ultimately blame Rosenstruck here? Dana White, you just consistently have been pushing these bullshit Contender Series guys or these new UFC signees up to these main event cards after 1 or 2 decent showings against these unranked fighters, who then all of a sudden you put these guys in a 5-step increase on ranked opponents, expecting there to be magic and expecting some craziness to happen, when in reality, you're getting jacked up odds on fighters who, let's be honest, have no business being in the main event to begin with, and they just turn out to be so one-sided that it's ridiculous. Dana White, don't get me wrong, for the genius that he is, when he took Michael Chandler off free agency, and Chandler got the knockout on Dan Hooker, when he signed Alex Pereira, and Pereira was a killer, these were guys that were very well established in their careers, and actually had that appeal, and actually had that opportunity where if you took those odds, you were kind of saying to yourself, yeah, you could probably do it. But you look at most recently, you got Joe Pyfer getting wrecked by Jack Hermanson, of all people, on the last Apex card. And what did Joe Pyfer do? He came off a knockout against Gerald Mearshart and a submission on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Why is he all of a sudden main eventing against a Jack Hermanson? Let alone, going for a big ranked fight. Another comparison we can make is Sean Strickland versus Abus Magomedov, albeit Magomedov did have a resume prior to joining UFC. It was in PFL. He really didn't fight anyone of stature that made sense to really give him a main event fight against, at the time, a top 10 contender in Sean Strickland. But literally, Magomedov, he had 1 UFC knockout against Dustin Stolfals. And then you throw him in with Strickland as a slight underdog. I mean, Dana White just seems to think that these new guys coming in, these guys who kind of look hot off the press, are just main eventers, and I just think he needs to take a step back and say, wait a minute, let's put, on one hand, yeah, let's put this guy up against a real contender, but maybe let's not take him and put him in a main event fucking fight night against one of the top 10 gatekeepers in the heavyweight division, just to see if he's, one of these guys that can, make a break in the UFC. It's weird. You have guys like Sean O'Malley, God, I'm going to mess up other names, Kyle Borrallo. There's other guys out there that actually kind of did this right, who came off of Contender Series, but, had at least 3 to 4 fights against, not no names per se, but, UFC veterans that have been around, probably on the same skill level at the time. They slowly built their way up to that championship caliber. They slowly built their way up to getting those ranked opponents. They weren't just thrown to the fucking wolves. This wasn't like a short notice situation where they were gonna fucking go and potentially just get murked. I mean, and again, say what you will about the Chris Moutinho's out in the world who took a short notice fight, but that's the kind of shit you have to do when you're a regional guy and you want to make a break in the UFC. You at least want to get signed. That's not the case here. These guys are already in, And Dana, you just effectively killed Shamil Gaziev's career at this point, because nobody's going to want to bet on him, especially as a favorite anymore. Nobody's going to be excited to see this guy perform. And if you're Gaziev, I think you have to be massively disappointed here. But you have to ask yourself, do you really want to be a fucking UFC fighter? And especially, do you want to be a champion? Because if you think Jairzinho was hard and you went through that, it's only going to get worse. What's going to happen when you get up against the Tai Tuivasas, the Cyril Gans, the John Jones? I mean, it doesn't get any easier here. You're not just going to get these cream puffs like you probably were in the regional section. I'm just so disappointed in Dana White here. I really expected much better of him, and we had the UFC 299 card to come out here. So I'll just end it on this. Jairzinho clearly should have been the favorite, but he wasn't. And honestly, like, Dana, you need to be better with matching up these cards. Like I said, stop putting these fucking young guys, stop putting these Contender Series guys in main events. Just, like, let them fight guys at their own level and see if they truly are about it. I mean, and that was kind of the whole theme of this card. It was, like, Contender Series guys who had been around for a minute, but, like, should they stay? Should we cut them at the end of this? And we saw a lot of surprises, but, like, honestly, you can make the case for most of these fights, they were where they belong. Gaziev, I think you can make the argument he should be cut. I just don't see a future with this guy at this point, especially with the way he quit. Jairzinho, I hope he gets a top 5 fight the next time around. Maybe he gets some humble pie, but honestly, like, if this is his second leg on his UFC career, he either needs to commit to the gatekeeper role or he needs to make a serious title run. Either way, yeah, I had no motivation to see that fight ever again. I hope Dana does improve the cards here on out. We'll probably be back on Friday to talk UFC 299. I have no other comments. I'm Steve Big Bucks Beta. Check me out sometime this week. I'll throw out some NHL picks. Have a good night, D-Gents. As we always say, make sure you guys always go win that motherfucking money.